to the Sugar and Spikes podcast, a show for everyone trying to navigate business and life without losing their minds. I'm Dez, a coach and consultant who is entirely overeducated, habitually overdressed, and obnoxiously honest.
And I'm Tammy. I'm a psychologist. Was I supposed to say more?
You know what? Enough said. We talk about mindset, mental health, and making it all work in the big, bad business world.
One quick note. We may be mental health professionals, but we're not your mental health professionals.
So, enjoy the show. Welcome to season 2.
Yay!
Season 2. Let's see. Unlike TV shows, we haven't taken a break between season 1 or 2. Nope. I'd say we don't believe in that, but that's not true. We believe in planning and making things happen when you have to make them happen.
That's right.
Okay, so since we didn't take a break, what separates season 2 from season 1?
The name season 2.
Well, for one,
No, I'm just kidding.
Our podcast art. Because when you have a chance to redo a logo, why not redo a logo?
Yeah, so I think some really good discussions about how do we want to move forward, what adjustments do we want to make, and how do we want to grow?
Yeah.
Right?
And I guess the thing is like season 2, yeah, that's what we have to name it under iTunes and everything. But really, it's just us following along with like, we're now in our second year.
Yeah.
You know, so we did it for a year. We figured things out. It's grown. It's shifted. We talked about it a bit in like our 1 year, not like anniversary episode, but
the wrap-up one.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, where, you know, Sugar and Spikes started off really as me talking somewhat drunk to my computer. And now it's me and Tammy talking actually sober today. In a headset.
Right.
In 2 headsets.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the only difference.
Growth.
Yeah, growth. And that's not the only difference. So, let's see. Aside from the logo, aside from the fact that we are sober today.
Make it sound like we're just like wasted when we do our podcast.
I mean, a couple times. And those are episodes we haven't aired.
Fair enough.
No, but seriously, all kidding aside.
Right.
What separates season 2 from 1? I think for starters, it came about in a really interesting time where it was like a really weird, I don't want to say like perfect storm, but alignment of things where as season 1 or the first year kind of was wrapping up, I had some distance because I was traveling a lot. Tammy had a lot of stuff going on. So we had this like natural distance from the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't recording every week, which for a long time we were generally recording every week. We had a bunch of backlogs, so we kind of ate through that while our lives were completely going crazy, which let us take a step back, which was nice. So as you tend to do with like anniversaries and big like dates like that, we were naturally looking back at the podcast and what we've done. And we had a really unique way of already having, like looking at it a bit more removed than if we'd been just like in the drudge of weekly recordings.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think also, I mean, podcast, yes. I think in our own lives, there's been a lot of transition in the last few months. And so I think it's natural that this part would transition too. Not transition in a negative or positive sense, but just kind of shift and grow because we've experienced a lot of growth. And I think you're going to see that in our work. And this is part of our work, right? Our body of work, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see that here because you see it in us, you know?
I think that's so true because this last year was us kind of getting settled. We had just moved.
Yep.
You were finishing school. I was in a position where I I don't know, this sounds so, like, hippie-ish, but I was, like, finding my identity,
Mhm.
really finding my professional place.
Yep.
Uh, just so many things that were up in the air, and I feel like, for as much as positive feedback as we've gotten about the podcast, which I love and appreciate and thank you, I'll kind of be its biggest critic and say it didn't have much of an identity. It very much was a reflection of where both Tammy and I were in life, which was redefining or reestablishing, getting our feet on the ground in terms of personal and professional identities.
Mhm. I totally agree. I totally agree.
That said, I feel like we've both kind of found our footing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that it's October,
Uh huh.
more than a year later.
More than a year later after having moved.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, um, kind of along those lines, I was thinking about it, I was like, well, it makes sense that the podcast has kind of found its footing and that we're able to kind of stand in what we've made and take ownership of, and this is what it should be.
Yeah. Like, what are we wanting to put out
Mhm.
there? What is it that we want to communicate? Because
Mhm.
sometimes I think we weren't really sure and we just
Mhm.
kind of hit record and let
Mhm.
what happened happen. And I think that's fine. I think it's worked great.
Mhm.
I think there are ways we can adjust it to work better and to say, like, what is our message? What do we stand for? What is
Mhm.
important to us? And then make something and create something
Mhm.
with our podcast from our points of view now that
Mhm.
we like have really established them and we know what they are.
Yeah. And for as much as I wanna be like, "It's super defined," it's really not. Like, our new tagline, I forget what exactly we say in the opening because we recorded that last week, but really it's for anyone who's, like, ready to crush, like, business and life.
Mhm.
Like, we're still keeping it broad, and we're still going into it a bit more refined. Our main goal is to be useful for essentially, like, entrepreneurs and people living in startup land, uh, that are trying to manage all the things. Now, that said, if you work in a corporate 9 to 5 job, that's not to say you're not gonna be able to relate to the things because you're still, like, focused on professional development and navigating life, and I feel like in terms of technology and stuff, and I'm rambling now, like, everything is just so meshed
Yeah.
that there is this pressure to be able to navigate all the things at all
I
times.
think there's that pressure no matter what field you're in.
Yeah.
And I think when I think about navigating business and navigating life, it's
Mhm.
really about taking your point of view and my point of view. And we're kind of the intersection of those two things,
Mhm.
right? Um, because as a psychologist, I'm really about um, that life piece, so to speak.
Mhm.
Not that you're not, you are.
Mhm.
But if you had to say, like, Tammy, like, what's kind of your jam? My jam
Mhm.
is like the life piece,
Yeah.
and you're really the business piece.
Mhm.
And then we're able to take that and put it together and
Mhm.
kind of come up with this. I hope people find like a unique point of view and a unique voice
Mhm.
that they really can connect with.
Yeah. So, as we kind of alluded to and said explicitly a few moments ago, was so much of season 1 was us just kind of hanging out and talking.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I was focused on a lot as I was thinking and as Tammy and I were talking and everything is I want to make sure that we're bringing value to folks. I want to make
Yeah.
sure that people walk away, not just entertained, and not just, oh yeah, check a podcast off my like box or whatever. But that people come away like learning something new, ideally able to take some sort of action afterwards. So we are kind of going to be doing a few things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're bringing back focus topics
Yep.
again,
Focus
which I
topics.
mean, who knew? It's
I think
groundbreaking.
it's going to be interesting to see if we can remain on a focus topic.
Yeah, yeah, it should be
I
fascinating.
know.
Focus topics, we're gonna be doing questions. We talked about it and we did it a while back, like in the very early days of the podcast
Mhm.
where we opened it up to questions and everything. And Yeah, so if you guys do have questions and want us to address things, hit us up on the socials. One thing for season 2 is Sugar and Spikes has an Instagram now.
Yay!
Oh my god. So one of the biggest things I would get from guests
Mhm.
was, yeah, like my PR agent said that you guys were good, but I couldn't find anything about the podcast on
Oh,
social media. And I'm like, yeah, they just need to look
we
it
totally
through
didn't
me.
think that through.
Yeah, but like so many of the guests were like, yeah, I guess. Like if you say it's good. Um so we're focusing on socials. So if you have questions, if you want us to hit on anything, right now we're starting small. We're actually doing what I tell a lot of my clients to do, which is focus on one and go from there.
Mhm.
So we're on Instagram.
Yeah.
Now, why would a podcast be on like a visual medium? A lot of that is our branding's very visual.
Mhm.
I'm a visual person. And that was where I decided, and I don't have to defend my social media choice to any of y'all.
No, and I think, I've kind of trended more towards Instagram.
It's better right
It's just
now.
I can't handle Facebook right now.
Yeah.
Not that Facebook is the only option, but like I'm never on Twitter or whatever. So
Yeah.
like I have to pick one, and I think
Mhm.
you and I were both like, "Well, what should we choose?" And we're both like, "Oh, I kind of feeling Instagram." And you're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, me too." And we're like,
Mhm.
"Great, that's what we're going to do."
Although you know what I've been thinking about downloading lately?
Hmm.
Snapchat.
Really?
I know.
Hmm.
Think I'm feeling old and I'm trying to get in touch with the younger side.
You're in a midlife crisis.
I'm in another quarter life crisis. Well, we've talked about my
You
quarter
just
life
weren't
crisis,
sure when it
right?
was supposed to happen, so
Yeah.
like you're stretching it out.
It's my 20s. I'm in my 20s.
I know. You don't have to tell people that.
um oh please.
You're like, "No,
But
I'm in my 20s, I promise."
yeah. No. Like anyways, we're on Instagram. If you want to connect with us, it's super simple. It's just Sugar and Spikes Pod.
Easy.
Super easy. We may be getting the URL. I should probably buy that URL before this like airs.
We
Uh,
may want to. We may want to. But you can tell, right? Like these are the pressures of doing things when you are like an army of two.
yeah.
And well, we have a third
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes person, but
He's been on a couple times.
he
Yeah.
has. And so an army of three. But it's pretty limited,
We're
right?
an army of 3 very part-time. Like I think
Yeah.
the 3 of us together make up like 10 hours of work a week
I know.
for the podcast.
But if you think about it, we all have full-time jobs. So like this is something that we do in addition to, and we have other responsibilities too.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is something we're passionate about and we
Mhm.
want to do it. And sometimes things get by us because we do have limited time.
Yeah.
And so I think that maybe not unlike people who want to start like a side hustle or want to
Mhm.
start a business, but are kind of doing it in their off time. And it's like, oh,
Mhm.
I didn't think of that. Like, well, of course not.
Yeah.
You don't have all your like mental resources to dedicate to thinking about these things all the time because
Yeah.
we just don't have that kind of time. So yeah.
Exactly. And I think having said that, um I tend to equate a lot of things to like health and fitness and working out. Like Tammy are very like fitness minded
Hmm.
kind of. And one thing that I noticed and it really became clear at the year mark was doing a podcast and stuff is very much like working out in that the like I look back now and it's been I've been working out consistently at least 4 or 5 days a week for the last like 3 years. Holy shit, like I've built a habit. And in terms of the podcast and everything it's we've dedicated enough time, we've made this a habit. But then when you get to that level and when you have that moment to step back, then it's deciding, well, what am I doing with my time? So, like with health and fitness, like working out can mean a lot of things for a lot of people. Some people, it's like a 2 hour leisurely hike. For other people that don't have a lot of time, it's I have 30 minutes to do a quick hit session
Mm.
and that's it. And I need to make the most of my time. And I think that that's kind of where Tammy and I are in terms of we're realizing We don't have all this like flowy yoga time for the podcast.
Right.
We need to be super intentional and make it count. And that means planning, having an idea around things, and going forward. And if HIT has taught us anything, it's that's how you get the best results.
I know, right? So just being focused and intentional.
Mm-hmm. Um, but I guess that kind of leads into the topic for this week.
Yeah.
And the topic for this week is I mean, we've kind of been talking about it this whole episode.
Yeah.
But like how do you know you're ready for more? Because or like how do you know you're ready for the next level? How do you know with your job you're ready for that promotion? How do you know if as an entrepreneur you're ready to charge more, take on a new project? How do you know any of those things because you know being comfortable is nice.
It is
Like, it
nice.
would've been really easy for us to just be like, "Done it a year, let's keep going," and not really take a step back and look at how can we grow the podcast. It would've been like, "Oh, cool, let's go out, get drinks, and just keep doing this."
Doing what we're doing. Well, I think, first of all, I want to say I don't know that everybody always wants growth.
That's
I
true.
think you can hit a place where you're comfortable and you feel good and it's going along and it's great and you make adjustments here and there
Mhm.
and that's what you're doing and you're satisfied with that. And I
Mhm.
think that we want to be mindful to not necessarily say you have to be growing all the time. You don't. Like,
That's
you
true.
know what I mean? Um so cuz I want people to think about here's the level I'm at.
Mhm.
Am I satisfied here?
Mhm.
Am I good here? And maybe the answer is yes.
Yeah,
And that doesn't mean in a month you can't change your mind. It
that's
doesn't mean in a
true.
year you can't change your mind. I think we have this idea that, like, oh, I'm happy where I'm at. Okay, I have to stay there
Mhm.
forever and a day. You can always change your mind,
Yeah.
right? So I know this is totally, see, I told you I couldn't stay focused.
I like it.
But
I like what I'm picking up what you're putting down.
but I think it's fine to be satisfied with where you're at. Maybe
Mhm.
you don't want a promotion. Maybe you're good at the level you're at.
I know a lot of people that have actually dealt with that.
Yeah.
Oh, my boss thinks I need to like grow in this trajectory and I'm actually feeling fine. I know this one gal who had the opportunity to have like a major promotion in her organization, but it required like 50 or 60% travel. And she's like, I'm thinking about having a kid.
Yeah.
So
So you have to think about
like
it. You have to
the
weigh
struggle
these
is
things.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to weigh these choices. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious, like, me with my kind of psychological stuff, I
Mm-hmm.
was immediately curious, like, oh, I wonder why her boss is really encouraging her to grow in this direction when keeps, saying that she's happy where she is.
I don't know if she said that. I think it was
Oh.
like their like quarterly check-in or whatever, and
Oh.
I was thinking you may be good for this trajectory and this position opened and let me know in a week. And
Hmm.
I don't know if it was like a pushy type thing,
Oh.
but like she really had to like look at what it was she wanted. And there was this cultural thing, like she and I talked a lot around I feel like I need to do this because it's kind of the next step. Like with the way my company does development and stuff, that would be the next step. It's more money. And if I'm going to have a kid, more money's good and all these things. And I don't want it,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And that's
That's
fine.
fine. You don't have to want it.
No.
You know, I think we're always pushed so hard to think there's always this next step. There's
Mm-hmm.
always this place up higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we can be chasing that and really forget we feel good here. We feel satisfied. We
Mm-hmm.
feel happy.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't mean that you can't re examine that later
Mm-hmm.
in a month, in a year, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and it's okay to be satisfied with where you're at,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. I think particularly for entrepreneurs, there are times where like so just in general, being satisfied with where you're at does not come easily for an entrepreneur. It's not a part of our DNA.
Yeah, no.
And there are times where you need to make yourself be okay with where you're at so you can take that view. So you can take a step back and look at what's going on and really decide without pressure and without being caught up in the weeds of where to go next. Because the thing is like, yes, be okay with where you are. And maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's in a couple months. There will come a point where you're ready for the next step.
So it's like a yes and, right?
Mhm.
Being satisfied where I'm at and being forward facing, right? Or
Mhm.
forward looking. And I was thinking about as you were talking, like the last few months,
Mhm.
right? Since all this changes started to happen to us. So like
Mhm.
I graduated and we've talked a lot about what happened with you
Mhm.
and I don't want to speak for you. So um but all of that happening,
Mhm.
that isn't the time to say, "Hey, we're not satisfied with where things are at right
Yeah.
now." Like we're like, "Hey, we're still doing this every week and that's
Mhm.
great. With amazing. Hats
Yeah.
off to us."
Mhm.
And so that was not a time to be saying, "How do we want to grow? How do we
Mhm.
want to change this? How do we want to be um, going into next year?" But we got to this natural place
Mhm.
where things kind of calm down. We feel more settled. Our points of view are more
Well, and our
developed.
normals became normal, like, the things that were throwing us off, like, this is what
Hmm.
a lot of people kind of I don't wanna say don't understand, but maybe forget,
Hmm.
is things aren't normal until they are, you know? So, like, everything that we were dealing with, like, I'm still doing kinda that crazy travel schedule, I'm still learning the ropes with where I am, I'm still in kind of a change of flux,
Adjustment.
and it's become the new normal, you know? So
Yeah.
there was space. It wasn't I think specifically, I think for both of us, I'll go and say it, things haven't necessarily calmed down. We've
Yeah.
learned how to manage them,
Yeah.
And so that became like you can't see my hands, guys, but like if we were at level A and we were super like flustered and stuff, then like I lost my train of thought, but like we got pulled up to the next level. And there was like growing pains and everything, but then like the next level, I guess level B since I used A instead of a number, level B, like the climb was hard.
Hmm.
And now we're there and it's just as sturdy as level A was. And now we're going to hang out
More,
at B.
more so,
More so.
more so
Yeah,
stable.
the true.
Well, I think we speak to the fact that adjustment takes time.
Mhm.
When new things happen to us, no matter what it is, amazing things, unamazing things, things that we're like, oh God, that
Yeah.
happened, or things that we're like, oh my gosh, that happened.
Mhm.
They take time
Yes.
to adjust to
Mhm.
learn, to deal with, to how am I incorporating that into my routine.
Exactly.
Like, I know for me, like, my job duties changed at work. And I was like, oh, I have to figure out how I'm going to navigate that. And so
Mhm.
that was taking quite a lot of my resources, my
Mhm.
ability to be resilient, because those are stressful
Yeah.
times, right? And so when you place stress on a system, and as it comes back to like equilibrium,
Mhm.
that just takes time. And so
Yeah.
you have to give yourself that time to
Mhm.
say, is really now when I want to be taking on even more? Probably
Mhm.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. But
That was your
then
point.
oh, I am pretty brilliant. Okay. So that now that we've established it's okay to not want to grow,
Mhm.
how do we decide that we're in a place where we can?
So I would say it depends. Not an original answer, I know. But
We
there's a
should just change the name of the podcast.
it depends.
It
It
depends.
depends.
I think we actually talked about that. I think that was one of like the short list names.
Well, here's the thing. There's no standard answer that fits everybody.
Yeah.
I think, are you starting to think about, can I take on more of a challenge? Are you
Mhm.
starting to think about, hey, I think I am ready for something new?
Mhm.
Or are you kind of bored where you're at?
That was the one that I was thinking about, and I
Hmm.
think in terms of, like, work, for job duties and everything, like, you see it play out so clearly. Like, I got
Mm.
this new job. Granted, I live in startup land, so this kind of never happens to me, but like,
Mhm.
I got this new job and it's amazing. And then you realize you're doing the same thing day in and day
Well, and you're
out.
like, "I got this, like, this
Like,
isn't
this
a
is
challenge
fine.
for me."
Yeah. No, like in the past couple of jobs that I've had, I've been in startup land and everything changes all the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, for a lot of people, like, especially in corporate culture, that's one way is when you realize that you're just like bored to tears.
Mhm.
I will say, I feel like I was starting to kind of feel that way with the podcast
You're starting to feel bored with it?
in terms of we're just showing up, doing the same thing,
Oh, yeah.
saying the same things. And it wasn't like we hit a rhythm and then we hit a rut.
Mm. I was gonna say I wasn't bored with the podcast, but I guess now that you put it that way, I see what you're saying
Mhm.
for sure. Yeah. And so then it was like, okay, we need to change this up and shake
Mhm.
it up a little bit and do something different so that
Yeah.
we're we're remaining as invested in it as we want to be and we're
Mhm.
not just like autopiloting all the time. And I
Yeah.
think there's something to be said for autopilot. I think that for me, I just can't live there for a really long
Mm-mm.
time,
Yeah.
but that's just me. I think, everybody kind of decides that everybody has their own level of how satisfied they are with that.
Mhm.
And so I think for me, um, I can't sit there for very long,
No.
or I kind of start to turn off or tune out or
Mhm.
whatever you want to say.
Hit a mild form of depression?
Mm, I
Dysthymia, at least.
I guess it depends on. I'm such a therapist. I was like, I guess it depends on how you define depression. Like, are you talking about major depressive disorder? Or are you talking about? Sorry. So that was yeah, too many things for me there. But I think in terms of like a little bit of a low mood,
Mhm.
kind of a disinterest in what I'm doing,
Well, it's dysthymia,
for
right?
sure, for sure. Well,
Kind of.
kind of that low level. I guess I would say yes. It's
Yeah.
kind of like this low level,
Uh,
um, kind of lack of interest in things I used
mhm.
to like. Like I used to love to do the podcast. It used to get
Mhm.
me all jazzed. I was like, "Yay, I'm going. We're gonna go record." And now I'm just like, "Oh, I have to go over there and we have
And
to
never doing this.
record."
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, okay, I get that.
Mhm. So, once we realize this, then I guess, like, the next piece of this and when you're looking at like, once you have this realization and awareness of, "Okay, I'm ready for the next step. I'm ready for the next thing." Speaking from, like, the entrepreneur mindset and the overachiever mindset, it's so, so easy to bite off more than you can chew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in fact, I think we've kind of done it with season 2, but we'll get there. Um, but yeah, so when we can keep using this as an example. I was like, we need new music, we need new branding, we need defined sections, we need new branding photos, we need all of like last week there we had a list of like 15 like big things.
I was like, okay, pick three.
And I was like, and they all have to be done by next Tuesday. Also, I'm going to be in Austin.
Yeah. So you have to have someone who says, I don't know if we can do all that right now. Maybe new music isn't the way to go right now.
Yeah.
Let's pick the three most important things.
Mhm.
And I think that that is where exploration is so important.
Mhm.
I think making the list of the top 15
Dreaming the dream.
important.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And then to say what is the next step of that? It's
Mhm.
not all 15 things, I can
Yeah.
tell you that. It
Mhm.
may be these two now with these two in the next 3 months.
Mhm. Well, and I mean, season 1 wasn't even a showing up on the scene with everything done. Like, I think the first 5 of the podcasts I didn't even edit. I put
Oh,
up.
yeah.
They were me and a tiny little USB mic, and I just put them up and I didn't edit. And then I asked for some editing, but we didn't have an intro. And then we got an intro, but I don't think we had music. And then we did like it was very much a new level, like step by step throughout the year.
Mhm.
If I had gone into the podcast with like, well, we have to have all these things,
We never would have
we would
ever
never would have
done
done
it.
it. And so,
I mean, even getting me on a mic was probably a huge achievement on your part.
I can move mountains.
I wouldn't have done that for anyone but you.
I can move mountains. I also got her to do a live stream, and if you guys didn't see that, you missed out.
Oh, yeah, I'm never gonna do that again.
But all this is to say, like,
That
for
was-
season 2, if I would have held to the, oh, I did all these things,
Mhm.
we wouldn't be airing this episode.
No, we'd just be plodding along.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
pulling cards.
but now
Again.
I kind of know what I like. I have this idea of the direction
Mhm.
that we're going to go in.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important, is holding the big picture and holding the creative idea and the goal, and then also being very, very realistic around what's doable, like exactly with what you were saying. But that takes self-awareness and honesty.
Yeah, and someone to say, hey,
Mhm.
you might need to put the brakes on a little bit.
Which is why, I mean, community and entrepreneurship is so essential. Like,
Mhm.
the best entrepreneurs that I know kind of work in like tandem or with buddies or have like advisors. You know, like, I don't know any entrepreneur that just like blazes their own trail and doesn't look back and is successful without any sort of like equal.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that a while
Mhm.
back. I can't remember which episode, but I distinctly remember the conversation we had about it. Is like,
Mhm.
even if it's just you, there's more than just you, and it's
Mhm.
recognizing who really is out there around you.
Well, out there around you, and I think, I don't know if we talked about it in that episode, but the idea of equal, like the idea of maybe like not in terms of investment in the business or
Right.
investment in other things, but someone that you view as like equal and better than you in certain areas to help be that like other viewpoint.
So someone you'll listen to.
Yeah, where you're not just going to like write them off.
Right.
Like, I know entrepreneurs that are like, well, yeah, I have a team and they support me and blah 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 blah. But then when the team's like, this is a bad idea, they're just like, do it anyway.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a really good point. So it would be like, if I'm understanding right, so it would be like if you and you're like, we have to do these 15 things. And I'm like, well, maybe pick 3. And you're like, fuck, we're going to do all 15. And that's just the end of it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really need someone who kind of that healthy kind of voice that you will listen to, or at
Mhm.
least consider. You
At
may
least
decide to go forward
consider.
with it anyway,
Yeah.
but after consideration,
Mhm.
exploration, thoughtfulness, all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So important. I think that's a good point. If you have a team around you who you don't listen to, they're not as valuable as they could
Yeah.
be, right?
Well, I think the thing is like it all comes down to ego, right?
Mhm.
And in entrepreneur land, in startup land, even in like the corporate setting, your ego's kind of essential because it boosts you to step up and be like, I've done this. It helps you ask for raises, and it gives you the confidence to
Be
do the
assertive.
presentations. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, ego is essential. And ego is the biggest downfall of every successful person I've ever known.
Mm.
Because when you are not able, let me make sure I'm not messing up my double negatives. When you're not able to be wrong, when you're not able to change, when you're not able to hear from other people, like, that's just a bad road.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, if you can't hear other points of view, if you're just going down your road with your
Mhm.
blinders on,
Mhm.
like that, I mean, that just sets you up to have things happen that you don't intend.
Mhm.
I don't think for 1 minute that anyone with a strong ego or that strong sense of
Mhm.
confidence um, really intends to do something that's harmful,
Right.
right? But those can be the consequences of not being able to hear the people around you and what they're
Mhm.
saying and take it in and consider it. Even
Mhm.
if you don't follow it, at
Mhm.
least you thought about it. Oh, they bring up a good point. I didn't think about that. Okay.
Here's how I count for this.
Right. And then,
Yeah.
yes, keep going by all means,
Mhm.
but you're talking about being like informed and,
Mhm.
thoughtful and aware, right? You
Mhm.
want to be aware because there's risks, right?
Mhm.
You're risking lots of things. If you're an entrepreneur, you're risking your livelihood, you're risking your income, you're risking other people's income, your team, your
Mhm.
business, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you are aware.
Mhm.
And we can never be aware all by ourselves
No.
because we only have our own point of view.
Mhm.
So, like, we can look, like, Des and I can look at the same set of facts and
Mhm.
maybe draw different conclusions
Mhm.
because we have different points of view. And I would
Mhm.
be like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Mhm.
So, okay, great. Now and you're like, oh, that's a great point. Something
Mhm.
that wasn't even in my awareness.
Yeah.
But you can only do that through like multiple points of view.
And I think, like, I'm just playing this out for if there's someone that's listening that is like, well, shit, I don't have that. Like, how would they find it? And I've seen this online a lot where people are like, I'm looking for a biz bestie and I'm looking to connect with someone. Like, very, very well intentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how something like this works. That's not how a team member, a consultant, but not in, like, the corporate consultant wording, but, like, that's not how you find that person that you need.
Yeah.
I think of every business partnership where I felt like equal or heard or something like that. It's never started off strictly as business.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's been another level to the relationship
Mm-hmm.
besides, like, a corporate businessy relationship.
Yeah, it was richer and more nuanced than that.
It
Yeah.
was like a friendship, even a professional friendship, like,
Like a
someone,
connection
yeah, like,
somehow.
tangentially, but you get on well with them. Like, you can't it's not as easy as saying, "I'm looking for X, Y, and Z."
Well, yeah, because like those deep relationships, because
Mhm.
that's what I consider those to be.
Mhm.
And those take time,
Mhm.
right? Those take time to build and grow. You and I weren't always best friends.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? It took time for that to
Mhm.
grow.
It sounds like we had beef. We didn't have
No, we
beef.
didn't. We didn't. We just kind of tangentially knew each other for a
Yeah.
while and then kind of built our friendship as
Mhm.
we saw each other more and more and more and got to know
Mhm.
each other better. But it's definitely couldn't have been like we jumped in and you're just like, up, I implicitly trust you with everything in the
Yeah.
world. That is not realistic.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like you have to know that person and develop that trust over time.
Mhm. And I think, like, with business, that's why networking and going to networking events
Mm-hmm.
and industry events and things like that is so important because you get to meet people that, like, are along the same lines and kind of are into the same stuff, and you get to know them without kind of that professional pressure.
Yeah.
Talk, and then it helps build more of a professional relationship,
Mm-hmm.
you know? I know that's happened a few times, and I know other people where, like, that's how they've met so many great business connections now is because they went to an industry event, went out for a couple of drinks, had some good conversations, and then when their business was ready to grow, they knew who to connect with.
Well, I think that's a great lead into some one of the new things we're doing coming into this year of season of the podcast.
Yeah? What did I stumble into?
Well, we're going to have people who contribute every
Oh, yeah, yeah,
week.
yeah. Mhm.
And these are people,
Who started out as friends.
yeah,
Like, who'da thunk?
right?
Mhm.
You couldn't have planned that any better. And we actually didn't plan it.
No, because I
And
had no idea.
you were like, what are you talking
I
about
had
today? I'm
no
like,
idea.
come on.
Yeah, so we're gonna be bringing in a couple regular contributors. The first one is, and I don't know who's gonna be on this episode, so it'll be a surprise for all of us. Um, but the first contributor is Noelle Johnson. Noelle Johnson was a guest
Mhm.
a few months back. She is the founder of My Interview Buddy, and I'm actually taking on more of a ongoing role with My Interview Buddy, and she's gonna have a contributing piece, for everyone that's listening that is in corporate, that is maybe looking for a part-time job, all that good stuff. It's one of the ways that we're bringing in additional value, and so she's gonna be talking about like looking for work, gonna have a couple times where she talks about like entrepreneurs bringing folks on,
Mm.
things like that. So,
Really important stuff.
and
Yes.
it's just gonna be so for these segments, so it's gonna be my interview buddy and then a couple other gals that I'm super close with. So that's something that's coming up. And we're gonna start that next week.
Yes. So I'm super excited about it. I know Des is super excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
And we haven't figured out this is one of those things where it's like, we haven't quite figured out what it's gonna look like. We haven't I just know it's coming down the pipeline for season 2.
and we're gonna try it out in a couple of different ways and see what
Mhm.
feels best to us
And
and them.
and if coming up you hear things that you like, let us know.
Yep.
Hear things you're like, "That was weird," let us know. Anything else for season 2 that folks should know? Or anything else about growth that folks should know?
No, I really like our topic for today. I think we
Mhm.
hit it in a bunch of really interesting and different ways.
Mhm.
So I hope people found it valuable. If they do think we're missing something, please
Mhm.
let us know. So, like, we want to use you, our audience, to say, we like what you're doing, do more of this. We don't like this piece, do more of this,
Mhm.
or go more into depth about this.
Yeah.
Because you all have your own unique and amazing points
Mhm.
of view, and we welcome that.
Yeah, and that is one thing I wanna touch on is, like, we don't do this just to hear ourselves talk because as much as I joke, like, that's not really why we're doing this. We do it for you guys, and what's been really interesting actually is with everything being so up in the air, Sugar and Spice hasn't been promoted as much as it was earlier this summer. It has really just hit this organic level of listenership and everything, and honestly, that was kind of one thing where I was like, "Well, are we gonna continue doing this? Are we not gonna continue this?" Yeah, no, we're continuing this, after looking at some numbers, which is awesome, and we just wanna make sure we're doing right by you guys.
Absolutely. Because I think for me, part of what I really love about um, what I do is being able to reach people and being able to help and being an advocate.
Mhm,
And this allows me to do that and reach even more people because there's only a finite number of people that can walk through my office.
mhm,
And so that's part of my core makeup, my core being. And so,
mhm,
like, if we're reaching out and we're touching people and they're really enjoying what we're putting out there, then I just love that. And I'm
mhm.
so glad.
Alright. Well, that wraps up the first episode of season
Season
2.
2.
Alright, we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye, friends.